He was born into humidity and magnolia blooms. It was April 9, 1954 springtime in Houston, Texas, a city bursting with oil money, sprawling suburbs, and the quiet hum of post-war optimism. That morning at a modest hospital just west of downtown, a boy named Dennis William Quaid arrived in the world. He was the first child of William Rudy Quaid Bill, to everyone an orderly, deliberate chemical engineer, and Juanita Bonniedale, a gentle schoolteacher with soft eyes and a soft voice who believed in the magic of books. From that very first breath, it seemed Dennis had been born into contrast, a father of formulas and a mother of metaphors. The Quaids lived in a small wood frame house on the city's northwest side, shaded streets, ice cream trucks in the distance, cicadas singing backup to childhood. Their living room had beige carpet, a brown plaid couch, and a record player that clicked and popped when Juanita played Mahalia Jackson or Patsy Cline. Bill was the type who believed every object had a place and every dollar had a job. He'd stack newspapers in perfect order, label his toolboxes, and balance the family budget with the care of a surgeon. Dennis, by contrast, was messy in the most innocent of ways. He left crayon drawings on walls, toy cowboys in shoes, and once glued googly eyes to the toaster. Instead of being scolded, his mother simply said, "That's creativity with character." By the age of 5, Dennis had become a performer without knowing the word for it. He would stand on the coffee table as if it were a stage one sock on, and one off reciting made-up stories to an audience of dolls' dogs and disinterested siblings. He had a voice that carried, not loud but clear, the kind of voice that made even adults pause and listen. When company came over, Juanita would say, "Dennis, tell them the story about the dinosaur with a briefcase," and without hesitation, he'd launch into a tale of prehistoric bureaucracy, with sound effects, accents, and dramatic pauses. He didn't memorize scripts. He improvised. He made things up. But more than that, he made people feel like they were there in the middle of the story. His imagination had no boundaries. A cardboard box became a spaceship, a treehouse, a courtroom. He turned a broom into a microphone, a cape into a tuxedo. One summer afternoon, he staged an entire courtroom drama in the backyard with Randy as the accused and Shane as the bailiff. The dog was the judge. Dennis played all the lawyers and most of the witnesses. He even paused for commercial breaks, pretending to pitch laundry soap between acts. Juanita brought lemonade and watched from the porch, smiling not because it was polished, but because it was fearless. "You've got a light in you," she told him once, "and the world's going to see it." By the time Dennis turned 7, the house had become his studio. Every room was a stage, every quiet moment a rehearsal. The bathroom mirror became a practice partner for monologues, the hallway a runway for dramatic entrances. Dennis narrated family dinners as if they were live broadcasts, reporting on mashed potato mountains and green bean avalanches with a seriousness that made his brothers choke on laughter. One evening during a blackout caused by a summer storm, he lit 3 candles and staged a one-boy, 5-character thriller about a submarine lost at sea. Even the dog stayed to watch till the end. His parents saw what was happening, and instead of trying to redirect it, they leaned in. Juanita enrolled Dennis in a neighborhood youth theater. It was held in the back room of a local church with a creaky wooden stage and red velvet curtains donated by someone's grandmother. The first time Dennis stood under those yellowing spotlights, he felt something electric in his chest, a current that pulsed not from nerves, but from a sense of belonging. He played a pirate in his first show. He had 3 lines. He delivered each one like it was Shakespeare. That feeling followed him everywhere. At school, he no longer waited for permission to speak in class, he turned answers into performances. Asked for a book report, Dennis gave a dramatic retelling complete with voices, sound effects, and an improvised ending that involved a dragon. Teachers didn't mind. Some rolled their eyes, sure, but more often than not, they smiled. "You're not a student," one said. "You're an act waiting for a curtain to rise." At age 10, Dennis was no longer simply imaginative, he was methodical about it. He began keeping notebooks, sketching out characters, scribbling dialogue, and planning imaginary shows with act structures. His heroes were not just cowboys or astronauts, but also storytellers, Gene Kelly, Lucille Ball, and even his mother who read aloud Steinbeck and Hemingway like gospel. One day he turned his room into a theater box office and charged his brothers 5 cents for entry. Popcorn extra, he warned. It was sold in Dixie cups filled with cereal. The walls of his room were covered in posters. He drew himself imaginary film titles like Dinosaur Trial or Space Detectives. Every time someone entered his room, he greeted them in character. Sometimes a detective with a trench coat made from an old bathrobe, sometimes a British villain with a twisted mustache made of string. He practiced crying on cue in the mirror, practiced dying dramatically on his bed, and even taught himself how to fall in slow motion, just in case a movie role ever came calling. His parents, especially Juanita, began to see it wasn't just a phase. One night, while watching the 10 Commandments, Dennis leaned over during a scene of Moses parting the sea and whispered, "You know I'd probably play Aaron better." Bill chuckled, but Juanita just nodded slowly. "Maybe you will," she said. By the time Dennis entered middle school, he no longer needed encouragement to perform, he needed space. He auditioned for school plays with the same intensity others reserved for championship games. Every casting announcement was a moment of suspense, every rehearsal a sacred ritual. When he played a crow in a fable-based production, he gave it a tragic backstory. When assigned the narrator in a Christmas pageant, he wore a cape and practiced his lines as if preparing for King Lear. It wasn't ego, it was immersion. His teachers were divided, some loved the flair, others feared he was distracting classmates. But none could deny that Dennis was different. He wasn't seeking attention for its own sake. He wasn't a class clown. He was something else, a kid in love with becoming other people, telling stories and finding meaning in pretending. A language arts teacher once gave him a private assignment: write a story from the perspective of a rock. Dennis turned in 5 pages, complete with heartbreak, jealousy, and redemption. When it came time for high school, there was no question Dennis would join the drama program. But what came as a surprise was his ability to balance it with sports. He made the football team. He joined the track club. And yet he never missed a rehearsal. Classmates began to admire not just his talent, but his discipline. One day, he ran 5 miles at track practice, then changed shirts and went straight to blocking rehearsals, still panting. "You're gonna drop someone warned." "Not until curtain call," he replied. Then came our town, senior year, his final bow as a high school student. Cast as George Gibbs, he poured everything he had into the role: honesty, longing, restraint. When he said goodbye to Emily in Act 3, there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. After the show, his teacher pulled him aside and said, "You're ready." Not just for acting, for living truthfully. That moment for Dennis wasn't just encouragement. It was a hand opening the door to a future he could finally name. He would become an actor. When Dennis graduated high school that year, he carried more than a diploma. He carried purpose. He enrolled at the University of Houston, pursuing degrees in drama and English. College was a new theater full of stage-light scripts thicker than his childhood notebooks and classmates from different states. He approached it seriously, as if each class, each rehearsal held clues to unlocking his future self. In his first semester, he immersed himself in Shakespeare and modern drama. There were late-night discussions about Hamlet's indecision, workshop productions of Brecht, and improv groups, where he experimented with character voices and movement. Living in a shared off-campus apartment with 3 other students, he balanced scripts with part-time work, waiting tables, delivering newspapers, even driving a beer truck. The physicality of those jobs taught him endurance, while the social interactions fed his ability to connect with diverse audiences. By his junior year, he had made a name in the campus drama scene. His breakout came in a production of Mice and Men, where he played George Milton. Critics from local newspapers came to watch college performances. He earned praise for emotional intensity and sincerity. A review called him raw talent with mature restraint. That summer, Dennis faced a pivotal decision: stay in Houston for another year, or take a leap into the unknown. With encouragement from Juanita and Bill, he chose Los Angeles Dive, and his mother said, "We'll hold the fort here." Arriving in LA in a beat-up Volkswagen Beetle, he entered a world both exhilarating and brutal. He shared a shabby apartment with 4 aspiring actors. Auditions felt like sports tryouts. Some he aced, others ended in polite rejections. He landed commercials first for cars, then for soda, then Snickers. Casting directors started noticing his sincerity. He'd walk off set thinking, "This is it." The money wasn't much, but with each gig his confidence grew. During one tough winter, Dennis took day jobs bartending, delivering newspapers, early dog walking to pay for acting classes and headshots. He'd save tips to print 500 resumes and drive across LA, stuffing them into agency mailboxes. He faced rejection after rejection, not right maybe later, no call. At 23, he had to reevaluate his options. But then came a callback, a small role in Breaking Away, the 1979 coming-of-age film. He walked onto the set and felt out of place, but determined. He nailed his scene with 3 lines and a single emotional beat. The director later said, "He didn't just deliver dialogue, he inhabited the moment." That role, though small, was a door opener. It gave him SAG card respect in casting rooms and more auditions for TV and film. At 24, he moved into better apartments, upgraded his wardrobe, still rehearsed monologues daily. He networked, made friends in the industry, and never lost his sense of why. He remembered his mother's words, "You belong there," and he clung to them. His journey from stage to screen had just begun, but the fire that ignited in Houston was still burning. After establishing himself in commercials and a small part in Breaking Away, Dennis Quaid's career began gathering real momentum. He landed guest roles on television shows like 8 is Enough and The A-Team, where he honed his skills under the bright lights of sets and fast-paced production schedules. This was more than practice. It was sharpening his instincts and learning how to stand out even in brief appearances without overshadowing the story. Behind the scenes, Dennis was committed. He spent hours studying scripts late at night, practicing accents and analyzing characters. He built rapport with director's crew and fellow actors. He learned how to take direction, how to transform feedback into performance, how to adjust his emotional intensity to fit the camera's lens and the story's tone. He lived on coffee and persistence, convinced that the next role, however small, was another opportunity to reveal depth and versatility. In 1983, Dennis landed his first major film role in The Right Stuff, portraying astronaut Gordon Cooper. Though not the lead, he held his own among a stellar ensemble cast, including Sam Shepard and Ed Harris. Directors praised his authenticity. He wasn't an astronaut, yet he communicated the quiet confidence of a man bound for space. The film's critical success introduced his name to Hollywood as a serious actor, and his confidence soared. His next key role came in Great Balls of Fire, 1989, where he played rock and roll legend Jerry Lee Lewis. This part demanded charisma, musical ability, and a fearless stage presence. He spent months learning piano, studying Lewis's style, and working with choreographers to nail the on-stage performances. When the film premiered, reviews noted that Quaid became Jerry Lee Lewis rather than simply portraying him. One critic wrote, "He doesn't mimic, he lives it." That film etched his name into the public's imagination and positioned him for lead roles. But success didn't stop there. He starred in The Parent Trap, 1998, showcasing his comedic timing opposite Lindsay Lohan. He was the charming, slightly befuddled father who had the perfect excuse for not meeting his twin daughters. His character was easily one of the most memorable parts of the film. It was a family favorite, and it added a new shade to his public persona, approachable, warm, and funny. This performance opened doors to more diverse roles in romantic comedies and family dramas. Through the late 1990s and early 2000s, Dennis continued this variety. The Rookie, 2002, a baseball drama, where he played a middle-aged pitcher returning to the field. Frequency 2000, a sci-fi thriller opposite Jim Caviezel, and Far From Heaven 2002, a period drama exploring social dynamics in 1950s America. Each role tested different facets: athletic vulnerability, emotional resonance, moral complexity. He became known as the dependable everyman who could surprise audiences with depth when they least expected. He met his first wife, P.J. Soles, in the early 1970s. She was also a budding actress, and they connected over weekend rehearsals and pizza nights in underground theater spaces. Their relationship was marked by passion and turbulence. Young love in LA isn't easy. Crackling chemistry at auditions, long drives back to their modest apartment, and shared dreams of catching that golden break. They married in 1978, and though their bond was strong, the constant pressure of auditions, rejections, and financial strain created tension. Dennis recounts how he would come home exhausted, rehearse lines in the mirror, then nurse his ego with a sandwich, only for PJ to remind him with gentle, stern honesty that love wasn't enough to pay rent. They welcomed their first child, son Jack, in 1984. Becoming a father changed Dennis subtly but profoundly. He became more disciplined, writing lines early in the morning before school drop-off, and more introspective. He recalls sitting in a dim nursery, rocking Jack to sleep, mentally drafting monologues that never made it to stage, but captured the nuances of fatherhood, fear, hope. Those quiet moments seeded a deeper emotional well in him, one that would later enrich performances with authenticity. Their marriage dissolved in 1986. The pressures of work and divergent paths took their toll. They remained amicable, but went their separate ways. For Dennis, it was a painful lesson about balancing ambition with connection. He focused on roles that touched on themes of family, father-daughter reconnect, paternal sacrifice, strained bonds. There was both healing and excavation involved, and audiences began to sense it, a vulnerability behind his trademark warmth. In 1998, he married Meg Ryan after they starred together in The Parent Trap. Their on-screen chemistry blossomed into real connection during filming of Proof of Life 2000. On set in South America, they spent downtime exploring jungles, cooking local dishes together, and writing letters in each other's character voices. Friends say their relationship kept them grounded amid Hollywood chaos. When they welcomed daughter Daisy in 2001, they said their prayer was simply, "Help us be present." By 2003, the stresses of celebrity and conflicting schedules began straining their marriage. Tabloids speculated, fans worried. In 2005, they separated and later divorced. That period brought a public reckoning, watching private grief unfold under camera flashbulbs. Dennis describes it as losing part of his soul in full public view. He retreated, taking 1-year sabbatical, traveling through Europe and Asia, seeking silence and perspective. He returned rejuvenated with a deeper understanding of identity beyond career and spotlight. During his time away from Hollywood, Dennis rediscovered old passions. He learned to sail, spending hours on quiet lakes in northern Italy, listening to wind and water instead of casting agents. He took photography classes, capturing ordinary scenes, vendors at Dawn Alley Cats, stretching shadows falling across ancient cobblestone. In Kyoto, he studied meditation. He described sitting still for the first time in decades as louder than applause. This phase of stillness would shape how he returned to acting, less hungry for validation, more focused on meaning. When he returned to the US, he accepted roles not based on budget or fame, but on story. He starred in The Express 2008, a biopic about Ernie Davis, the first African-American Heisman winner. Dennis played the coach, tough, principled, ultimately transformed. He also began narrating documentaries, lending his voice to stories about climate change, military service, and personal recovery. He said, "When you've lost pieces of yourself, telling stories about hope isn't performance, it's practice." In 2011, he married Kimberly Buffington, a Texas real estate agent, and returned to something close to normalcy, raising twins, attending school plays, hosting neighborhood barbecues. Friends noted how he seemed lighter, not because life was easier, but because he no longer felt the need to be the man in the spotlight. He gave talks at recovery centers, shared his story, openly struggles with fame, addiction, self-doubt, and mentored young actors who reminded him of his Houston days. His faith, which had quietly accompanied him for decades, became more visible. He began attending services regularly, even performing music at Sunday gatherings. He said, "Faith isn't about perfection, it's a place to go when everything else falls away." In interviews, he often referenced grace, not as something earned, but something remembered. He admitted he still wrestled with ego and regret, but now had tools to return to balance. But life, even after wisdom and growth, is never without its complications. In 2018, Dennis and Kimberly finalized their divorce. It was handled with quiet dignity, but behind closed doors, it was another emotional recalibration. They focused on co-parenting, ensuring their twins were shielded from the spotlight. "We chose grace over bitterness," Dennis said in an interview, "because the world is watching our children watch us." In 2020, something unexpected and joyful happened. Dennis married Laura Savoy, a doctoral student in accounting, 39 years his junior. Their meeting was serendipitous, a charity gala, a brief hello, and weeks later, a conversation that felt like it had no end. "She doesn't look at me as Dennis Quaid, the actor," he said. "She sees Dennis, the guy who likes to make scrambled eggs at 6 a.m. They married quietly on a beach in Santa Barbara during the pandemic with only a pastor and a photographer present. That marriage, he says, has been grounding. "I've stopped needing to prove anything," he told People magazine. "Now I just want to be present for the people I love, tell stories that matter, and enjoy every damn morning I get to wake up." He took fewer projects, spent more time writing songs. Yes, music, his first love, and even started performing live at small venues, blending country, gospel, and blues with stories between songs. Music had always been a quiet undercurrent in his life. He had played guitar since childhood, wrote songs in college he never shared, and once nearly formed a band before landing his first TV role. Now in his 60s, that dream had room to breathe. He formed a group called Dennis Quaid, and the Sharks, performing covers and originals with disarming sincerity. His shows weren't about stardom, they were about stories, shared moments, and joyful noise. In recent years, Dennis has become more reflective, less the leading man, more the storyteller. He spends time speaking at recovery programs, visiting schools, and quietly donating to shelters and mental health nonprofits. He rarely talks about it publicly. "I'm not trying to fix the world," he said, "but I remember how it felt to be lost. If I can offer a compass even briefly, I will." His children, now grown, often visit or travel with him. Jack, his eldest, has started his own acting career, and Dennis offers advice only when asked. "I want them to make their own messes," he jokes. "It's the only way to find your own way." He plays music for them, cooks often, and writes letters by hand. "Emails don't smell like you," he says. He still acts roles in indie dramas, historical films, and voice narration. But there's a difference now. He no longer seeks applause, he seeks resonance. He wants to play characters who fall and get up, who laugh through grief, who remind people that imperfection is not failure, it's humanity. "I'm not interested in perfect," he says. "I'm interested in real." At 70, Dennis Quaid remains a rare kind of Hollywood presence, not just durable, but evolving. His story is not a smooth arc, but a layered novel full of wrong turns, beautiful detours, and unexpected redemption. And perhaps that's why he endures. Because we don't just watch his roles, we feel like we've lived some of them with him. He's no longer chasing fame, but resonance. At 70, Dennis Quaid has redirected his life's compass toward deeper echoes, stories that linger, voices that heal, moments that matter. He begins each day not with scripts or schedules, but with quiet rituals, a walk at dawn, a cup of black coffee taken slowly, a prayer for clarity. He once wrote in his journal, "After all the roles and applause, I just want to live truthfully day by day." Beyond acting, Dennis has quietly ventured into writing and directing. He's co-written a feature film about generational forgiveness, drawing inspiration from his own journey with divorce and reconciliation. He's also directed a stage production at a community theater in Texas, no budget but full of heart. He describes it as working without expecting fame, just connection, sweat, and shared humanity. Kung Mung Team Kim Den Vong, Jikan Ket Noi Mo Hoi Vanyan Ban Chung. A pivotal moment came during a mentorship session at a young actor's workshop. A teenager told him, "I felt I could fail and still be loved because you've lived it and still survived." Dennis paused, then replied, "That's what we're here for, to show that scars aren't shameful, they're badges of story." His colleagues describe his presence on set as grounding. Meg Ryan once said in an interview, "Working with Dennis is like talking to an old friend who never pretends." Co-star Jeremy Sisto noted, "He's the guy you want in your corner, wise, steady, full of humor and humility." His latest project, a memoir titled Echoes of the Ordinary, chronicles his small-town origins, Hollywood peaks, personal failures, and quiet redemption. It's filled with short chapters called moments of grace, like teaching his twins to ride bikes or getting lost in Venice's back streets. Critics call it a blueprint for living with courage and kindness. He hopes it becomes a gift, not a message, because life is richer in the telling. In Sovereign, Dennis Quaid plays John Bouchard, a seasoned and principled sheriff who is caught between the ideals of law enforcement and the growing extremism of those around him. The character is deeply conflicted, embodying the tension between maintaining order and grappling with the human cost of doing so. Quaid brings his signature depth and gravitas to the role, capturing the internal struggle of a man who is dedicated to his duty, but increasingly challenged by the forces of radical belief. He's also cautious about Hollywood's future, concerned about social media's pull, the erosion of storytelling soul, and the risk of replacing humanity with algorithm-driven content. He advocates for films made at soul level, for performances grounded in lived truth. He frequently says, "We don't need more noise. We need voices that say, 'I see you, you matter.'" Now he divides his time between interviews, workshops, set visits, and writing music. His band, Dennis Quaid and the Storytellers, tours small venues where he opens each show by telling a story that set the emotional tone. My favorite applause, he smiles, is when someone comes up afterward and says, "I needed that story tonight."